It is midnight in Washington, 5 a.m. in London, and 2 on a Thursday afternoon here in Seoul. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kim Hyun-ji. Let's get a check of the main stories we are following at this hour. The Korean trade official who was kidnapped in Libya earlier this week has been rescued and is safe and unharmed. International talks aimed at bringing peace to war-torn Syria get underway in Switzerland, but the two sides cannot agree on the future role of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. More dead ducks are found in a river some 50 kilometers north of the province where the highly pathogenic H5N8 strain of the bird flu was first detected in Korea. And reports say these ducks are highly likely to have been infected with the bird flu. But let's start off the newscast with the release of a Korean trade official. So it is indeed good news to start the day off with. The Korean trade official who was kidnapped in Libya earlier this week has been rescued and is safe and unharmed. For more, let's connect to our correspondent Hwang Sung-hee, who is standing by at the Foreign Ministry. Sung-hee, we hear that the official is fine. What other details do we know at the moment?
Hi, Angie. Certainly, it's good news. Korea's foreign ministry has confirmed that Han Seok-woo, the head of the Libya unit for the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency, also known as KOTRA, is in good health and has been safely handed over to the Korean embassy in Tripoli after being freed by the Libyan security forces. Now, the release comes just 3 days after Han was kidnapped by a group of unidentified armed men on his way back home from work. Now, after being interviewed by the embassy on the details of the abduction, Han is expected to travel to the Mediterranean island of Malta to see his family there and then return to Korea with them. Now, whether he will return to Libya to serve his post, we don't know that for sure yet, but KOTRA says that the decision is solely up to Han to make. Yeonji?
Well, it sure is a relief to know that he's now in safe hands. It must have been a terrible time for him and his family in particular. But how did his release come about? Was there any ransom paid?
No, there hasn't been actually, but there are reports that the kidnappers asked for as much as $2 million in exchange for Han's safe return. However, the Seoul's foreign ministry says that it is the principle of the Korean government not to pay any ransom for abductees and said the ministry, in coordination with the Libyan government, poured all its efforts into securing the safe release of Han ever since the day he was kidnapped. Now, the rescue operation was led by the Libyan government, and the 4 kidnappers have been arrested, who are reportedly part of a small militia. We still don't know why Han was taken in the first place, but it's believed that the abduction was not ideologically or politically motivated, but that the kidnappers were just after money. Most of Libya has struggled with violence and unrest in recent years following the ouster and death of dictator Muammar Gaddafi, and there are nearly 2,000 such armed militias operating across the country, with foreigners often being the victims of the abductions. Now, this was the first time a Korean was kidnapped in Libya, and in order to prevent such similar incidents from happening again, the ministry is looking thoroughly into the case. Yeonji?
Well, thank you, Sung-hee, for that live report. That was our Hwang Sung-hee reporting live on the safe release of Han Seok-woo, the Korean trade official who was kidnapped in Libya earlier this week. Switching gears now, there are some major changes in how the parliament operates underway. The country's main rival parties have tentatively agreed to split the annual parliamentary audit of the government in 2 starting this year. The decision was first announced during a meeting of the main opposition Democratic Party's lawmakers Thursday and later confirmed by the ruling Saenuri Party. Under the tentative agreement, the parliament will split the 20-day annual audit of government offices into 2 parts, with one part in the first half of the year and the other in the second half. The rival parties have also agreed to move up the deadline for the government to submit its annual budget proposal in time for the first of the 2 audit sessions. The parliament was deadlocked for much of last year due to a standoff between the rival parties, and there have been demands from the public to make parliament more efficient. Over now to Davos, where President Park Geun-hye emphasized the creative economy and entrepreneurship during her opening speech at the World Economic Forum. Our Oh Jin-ju, who's traveling with the president, filed this report.
President Park says the so-called creative economy will be the driving force in, quote, reshaping the world, the theme of this year's World Economic Forum in Davos. In her opening speech at the first session of the global event, President Park pointed to entrepreneurship as the key to realizing a creative economy together with creativity.
We have a saying in Korea, beads are not considered jewelry unless they are woven together. Entrepreneurship is what weaves together the beads of creative ideas into new markets and into new jobs.
The president introduced Seoul's efforts to work towards a creative economy, such as setting up online and offline platforms and a public-private task force to help creative ideas develop into businesses. She vowed to ease any regulations that stand in the way of convergence and the creation of new industries by capping the total volume of regulations and presiding over a ministerial meeting to oversee such efforts. The creative economy, President Park says, could lay the path to overcoming three major challenges facing the world: low growth, high unemployment, and income disparities.
Through startups, as well as the innovation of existing businesses, a creative economy can generate new engines of growth and can grow jobs. There will also be less income inequality, since anyone with a great idea can live out one's dreams by starting a business.
When asked about concerns about the cost of reunification, an issue that keeps foreign investors from pouring money into South Korea, President Park said that reunification would be a jackpot not only for the two Koreas but also for neighboring countries.
통일이 되면은 북한 지역에 대대적인 SOC를 중심으로 한 투자가 일어나게 될 것이고, 또 이런 북한뿐만 아니라 주변국들도 어떤 큰 성장을 기대할 수가 있다.
She explained that the investments would boost other projects in, for example, China's 3 northeastern provinces and Russia's maritime territory. A notable and unexpected guest in the front row during President Park's speech was Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Many wondered whether the two leaders would meet or have a brief talk, but they didn't. Oh Jin-ju, ARIRANG News, Bern.
Speaking of creativity and innovation in Korea, Korea has been ranked the most innovative country in the world. That's according to Bloomberg, which gave Korea 92.1 out of 100 for its ability to innovate. This year, Bloomberg's annual survey looked at 215 countries to determine how innovative they are based on 7 factors: R&D intensity, productivity, high-tech density, researcher concentration, manufacturing capability, tertiary efficiency, and patent activity. Korea ranked second in patent activity and manufacturing capability and had the weakest performance in productivity, ranking 33rd. Overall, Sweden was the second most innovative country, followed by the US, China, and Japan. The Korean economy appears to be moving into a phase of stable recovery. The central bank says the private sector is waking up from years of slumber to drive growth, although a major government spending cut forced a slightly lower growth rate in the October to December period. ARIRANG's Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
There are signs that domestic demand is picking up steam, and growth in coming months is expected to be more balanced between exports and domestic activities. The Bank of Korea said Thursday that the economy grew 0.9% in the fourth quarter of last year from the previous quarter. That's slightly down from a 1.1% gain in the July to September period, but it was largely because of a major cutback in fiscal spending, prompted by less than expected tax revenues towards the end of the year.
The national tax incomes dropped last year by 1.1 trillion won, or roughly $1 billion from 2012. and that resulted in a drop in government spending. This was the major factor of the slower growth in Q4.
The central bank added that the fourth quarter growth was encouraged by rising domestic demand, which is expected to help speed up growth. It also confirmed that the economy grew 2.8% for all of 2013 from the previous year, as earlier projected. That compares with a 2% growth in 2012 and represented a reversal of a two-year slowdown. The recovery came from rising exports, growing private consumption, and construction investment. The central bank said that the Korean economy will likely continue its recovery and forecast a growth of 3.8% for 2014 and 4% for 2015. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Let's now take a look at how the local stock market is doing at this hour. Seoul shares traded lower late this Thursday morning as investors await earning reports by major listed companies. By 1:30 p.m. Korea time, the benchmark Kospi had dropped more than 1% to 1948, and the tech-heavy Kosdaq had edged up to 523. At the foreign exchange counter, the Korean currency was changing hands at 1,072 won against the greenback. Turning to the bird flu crisis here in Korea, more dead ducks found in a river in southern Korea suggests the virus is spreading. Officials say it is highly likely that 5 ducks found dead in the Kumgang River in the central part of the country were killed by the bird flu virus plaguing the nation. The dead ducks were found about 50 kilometers north of Gochang County in the southern province of Jeollabuk-do, where the highly pathogenic H5N8 strain of avian influenza was first detected. This comes after officials announced that bean geese were also found to be carrying this strain, along with Baikal teal ducks. So far, bird flu has been confirmed at a total of 8 farms in Korea. Some 300,000 ducks and chickens have been culled since the virus was first confirmed a few days ago. Korea is not the only country in Asia battling an outbreak of animal illness. In Vietnam, an increasing number of people are falling foul to swine flu, with 2 high school students, the latest confirmed as suffering from the H1N1 strain of the virus. Local media outlets report, citing quarantine authorities, that 11 other high school students in the capital, Hanoi, are undergoing tests to see whether they have been also contracted it. The students were hospitalized after complaining of high fevers and coughs. The results of a closer examination are expected soon. The U.S. government is calling on Korea and Japan to come up with an agreement on how the body of water between the two countries should be identified. U.S. State Department Deputy Spokesperson Marie Harf said in a press briefing Wednesday that Washington will continue to use the name Sea of Japan to refer to the body of water, in line with the U.S. Board on Geographic Names. She rejected the idea of using both East Sea and Sea of Japan, saying it is a long-standing U.S. policy to use only one name for the sake of clarity. Korea considers the name Sea of Japan a legacy of Japan's imperial past, as it came into use during Japan's colonial rule of Korea in the early 20th century. Representatives of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and the main opposition group traded fiery exchanges Wednesday on the first day of a major peace conference in Switzerland intended to lead the country out of civil war. Our Son Jung-in reports.
Wednesday's talks, involving 40 or so foreign ministers, ended with little progress. The much-anticipated international talks are aimed at bringing peace to the country. However, both the Syrian regime and the Western-backed main opposition group refused to compromise on the future role of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in the transitional government. Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim said that only the Syrian people could decide the fate of President Assad and called on foreign powers to stop supporting terrorism and to lift sanctions against Damascus.
If you are really worried about the humanitarian situation in Syria, then take your hands off us and lift the sanctions and the siege on the Syrian people.
Opposition leader Ahmed Jarba accused Assad of war crimes and demanded the Syrian government delegation sign on to an international plan for a transfer of power. Siding with the opposition, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said Assad should have no place in a transitional government. And Syria's envoy to the United Nations, Bashar al-Jarafi, said that Damascus needed support to negotiate with the opposition to implement a 2012 Geneva Communique that calls for a transitional government and said that the terrorism must also end. During the talks, there were few signs that any party was ready to make concessions. UN leader Ban Ki-moon said that the hard work begins on Friday, when direct discussions will begin in Geneva, and urged Syria's regime and opposition to work together to end the bloodshed. Son Jang-in, ARIRANG News.
Turning to Ukraine now, which appears to be descending into chaos. Opposition leaders have issued an ultimatum to the president following talks that failed to answer their demands amid anti-government protests that turned deadly on Wednesday. Our Shin Se-min has more.
Ukrainian opposition leaders have issued an ultimatum to President Viktor Yanukovych: call elections within 24 hours or prepare for the worst, following the first death in a crisis that's rocked the country for 2 months. The opposition leaders emerged from talks with the president on Wednesday, aimed at quelling the escalating violence in Kiev, saying the talks have failed, with leader Vitaly Klitschko calling on supporters to prepare for a police offensive. The opposition also wants the government dismissed and harsh new anti-protest laws scrapped. The protests turned deadly Wednesday as Ukrainian riot police clashed with protesters in Kiev. These were the first fatalities since protests began in November after Yanukovych walked away from a planned treaty with the European Union in favor of closer economic ties with Russia. Protesters gathered in Independence Square, but things escalated quickly when riot police began dismantling the main protest camp there. 2 men were shot dead in the violence that followed, with hundreds of protesters injured. The European Union has threatened to take action against Ukraine over its crackdown on the anti-government protests. European Commission President José Manuel Barroso said the EU was shocked by the fatalities and would have to rethink its relationship with Ukraine with possible consequences. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Olympic committees in several nations have received anonymous emails regarding security threats to the upcoming Sochi Winter Games. Officials say the emails are a hoax, but with security fears refusing to go away, the United States has offered a helping hand to Russia. Kim Min-ji has the details.
Olympic officials have dismissed an email warning of a possible terror attack at the Sochi Games. Earlier, the U.S. Olympic Committee and several European countries, including Italy, Germany, and Hungary, received an email regarding a security threat against visitors, athletes, and officials should they attend the Games. The International Olympic Committee said the email contains no specific threat and appears to be a random message from a member of the public. IOC President Thomas Bach said he remains confident in Russia's Olympic organizers.
But we are very confident, and we know that the Russian authorities, together with their many partners internationally, are doing everything to organize the games in a safe and secure way.
In the midst of escalating concerns, the U.S. said Wednesday that it will provide full support to help Russia bolster security around the Olympic venues. White House spokesman Jay Carney said President Barack Obama also discussed safety issues with Russian President Vladimir Putin over the phone this week.
We have seen an uptick in threat reporting prior to the Olympics, which is, of course, of concern, although it is also not unusual for a major international event. And we have offered, as I said, assistance to the Russians, any assistance that they might need to counter that threat.
The U.S. has offered Russia technology that can be used to shut off explosives during the Games. On Tuesday, General Martin Dempsey, chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, discussed the issue with his Russian counterpart during talks in Brussels. No decisions have been made. Russia has been stepping up its internal security affairs ahead of the Olympics, which opened February 7th. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
And it is time for our daily arts and culture segment with Lee Tae-ho, who has some very good news for fans of the arts, culture, and entertainment. Good afternoon, Tae-ho.
Good afternoon, Yeonji.
So let's get straight to it. So what is this good news that you have for us?
Well, I'm glad you asked because I have news or update about the first monthly culture date here in Korea, which is very good news for all the fans of arts and culture. So let's go ahead and get right into the details.
Back in October, during the second meeting of the Presidential Committee for Cultural Enrichment, plans were announced for a monthly Culture Day. But what exactly is Culture Day? Well, the concept is to give residents of Korea more opportunities to experience culture in their daily lives. The last Wednesday of every month, starting this month, will be designated as Culture Day, with free or discounted admissions to numerous cultural events in Korea. The benefits, however, extend to other areas as well. For instance, tickets for movies that begin between 6 and 8 in the evening on Culture Days will be discounted to just 5,000 won, which is less than $5. Other benefits include half-price admissions to pro basketball and volleyball games for parents who accompany children who are in elementary school or younger. Performances staged at the national institutions such as the National Theatre of Korea, the National Kugak Center and Seoul Art Center will also be offering free or discounted admissions. Also sure to be popular are the free tickets and discounts that will be offered for art and photo exhibitions at national, public, or private institutions. And finally, cultural landmarks like Gyeongbokgung Palace, Deoksugung Palace, and the Chongmyo Shrine are among the national treasures that are providing free admittance to visitors on Culture Day. The first ever Culture Day will be next Wednesday, the 29th of January, and every last Wednesday of each of the following months. And as an added bonus on this day, many national and public institutions will be open for extended hours. For more information on all the benefits and the list of institutions taking part in Culture Day, visit www.culture.go.kr.
So it looks like President Park Geun-hye's promise to have everyone enjoy culture in their lives is really taking shape.
That's right. Now, this is very important because now citizens really get to experience firsthand the cultural enrichment that President Park, I think, really promised and encouraged for her administration.
Right. Exciting news indeed. Well, do you have anything for this weekend?
Well, you know, there are some great family events coming up for this weekend, especially focused on children and parents having fun together.
A glimmer of light shining bright on a fingertip. Now you see it, now you don't. Then, all of a sudden, the light shines brightly in an array of different colors. While at first surprised, now this child is performing the same trick for his family and friends. I-Can Magic is an event that combines the fun of magic with education, making for a satisfying outing for both parents and children alike. Children do not simply watch the show that is performed, but participate in it, while also learning about the basics of science and math.
It was surprising to see the light disappear into the magician's mouth, then suddenly reappear. But when I found out the principle behind the trick, I saw the science behind the magic.
It was more enjoyable because the show isn't just for children, but for moms and dads and the whole family.
But that's not the only thing for students to do during winter vacation. This year, students can get a head start in life by learning about banking. At first glance, this museum looks like a customer lounge at an ordinary bank. But at the Korean Financial History Museum, children can easily learn how to make and use their own bank account, in addition to learning the simple ins and outs of investing.
I liked coming up with my own password for my bank account and entering it into the machine.
I bought stock for 15,000 won, but I hope it rises to at least 20,000.
Over at a learning center located inside Sejong Center for the Performing Arts, children can learn what the night sky was like during the reign of King Sejong. The program uses maps of constellations made during King Sejong's rule, and children learn about the different seasonal constellations as well as their astrological signs. So fret not, parents, because during the long winter vacation and holiday season, there are plenty of things for children and the whole family to enjoy together.
Wow, definitely it is a great outing opportunity for the entire family on the weekend.
That's right, and I doubt you'll be hearing any complaints from parents or children, so that is definitely an added bonus.
Well, thank you for the report today, Taeho. We will see you again on Monday.
All right.
Let's now get a quick check on the weather conditions around the world. Those are the stories we are following at this hour. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with more of the day's latest at 4 p.m. Korea time. See you then.